Now that we're in the 60th year of Doctor Who and are patiently awaiting the arrival of the highly anticipated anniversary specials, it seems like a good time to take a trip down memory lane. It's hard to believe, but 10 years have passed since the Day of the Doctor. 10. So we thought we'd look back and explore some of the best details, trivia, and behind-the-scenes stories you might not know. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Who Culture, here with 20 things you didn't know about the Day of the Doctor. Number 20. The Night of the Doctor wasn't released as intended. Prior to the airing of The Day of the Doctor, a prequel titled The Night of the Doctor was released. In a wonderful surprise, it featured Paul McGann reprising the role of the 8th Doctor, and finally gave him the on-screen regeneration he'd previously lacked. The initial plan was for The Night of the Doctor to be released on the 16th of November 2013, 1 week before the main episode premiered. However, when it was discovered that McGann's involvement was about to be leaked, it was made available on the 14th of November instead. This meant that it actually dropped on Paul McGann's birthday, which was certainly a happy coincidence. Number 19. John Hurt didn't audition for his role. Any actor's dream is to become so well established that they are offered roles on the spot without the need to audition. Of course, this is not usually the case, and those audition processes are key to discovering breakout talent, Matt Smith and Karen Gillan for example. But when showrunner Stephen Moffat planned to introduce a brand new incarnation of the Doctor for the 50th anniversary, he knew that he needed someone remarkable to embody the role. The script for The Name of the Doctor simply ended with the words, "and the most famous actor in the world turns around." John Hurt was always on Moffat's mind for the role, and so it was offered to him outright. Thankfully, with very little time to decide, the legendary actor accepted the part, and within days of finishing a play, he was in Wales ready to get started. Number 18. The episode originally began with a voiceover. The Day of the Doctor begins with that iconic old-school Doctor Who title sequence before transitioning into a scene of Clara teaching a class. Originally though, Moffat's script included a voiceover spoken by the Doctor, or somebody else, he wasn't fully sure, but this was abandoned simply because he didn't like it. Long ago, on the lost world of Gallifrey, the planet of the Time Lords, there was a legend much loved by the children. It told of a great hero who would return on their darkest day to save them all. But first, he would have to save himself. Yeah, it feels a bit too Hollywood, doesn't it? A bit too on the nose. Definitely the right decision to cut it. Number 17. Tennant's TARDIS was only available for half a day. It would have been extremely disappointing if the 10th Doctor's return didn't also feature an appearance from his TARDIS, but the Day of the Doctor kindly delivered on that front. It isn't on screen for very long, and that's because there were some real-world complications that prevented the crew from using it. At the time, Tennant's TARDIS was part of the Doctor Who experience, which is where they borrowed it from while filming the episode. But because the experience needed it back, the production was only able to utilise it for half a day. To get around this, Moffat scripted in the idea of Tennant's grungy coral TARDIS reverting back to the colder, more machine-like Matt Smith version. Number 16. The initial plan featured the 9th Doctor. While John Hurt's turn as the War Doctor went down a treat, there was some disappointment about the absence of Christopher Eccleston's 9th Doctor. In his initial plans for the anniversary special, Stephen Moffat had intended for 9 to feature. He reached out to Eccleston, who unfortunately decided against reprising the role, and the War Doctor was created in his place. No hard feelings here though, because Eccleston himself has since explained that he loved what Moffat and Hurt did with the character. He said, "I just thought that script was immaculate, and I think it added to the canon of Doctor Who in a way that me coming back wouldn't have done. I think the War Doctor was a brilliant working of Stephen Moffat's imagination, and I loved watching John Hurt do that." Number 15. Some of the Daleks were actual toys. As well as impressive CGI effects, there was another technique used to create the explosive Time War sequences in The Day of the Doctor: miniatures. One way these were utilised was for the moment where the War Doctor's TARDIS crashes through a wall and destroys several Daleks. It was far more practical to smash a smaller TARDIS model through the wall than a full-scale one, but this also meant that smaller Dalek props were needed too, otherwise they'd look like giants, and that would be weird. To do this, the team sourced several off-the-shelf Dalek toys and simply made a few tweaks to them to make them look more accurate. Et voila! Ready-made small-scale Dalek props. Number 14. Why the 11th Doctor forgets the children. The moment that 10 scolds 11 for forgetting how many children were on Gallifrey the day he destroyed it was chilling.
I moved on. Where can you be now that you can forget something like that?
Spoilers.
In the on-screen version, 11 justifies this by explaining that he's moved on, but the novelisation explores his forgetfulness a little deeper. It explains how the Ninth Doctor spent so long saving life after life to distract himself from counting. One of those lives saved was a therapy robot, which he let loose in the corridors of the TARDIS. The novel suggests that, years later, River and 11 found the robot, and River used its power to erase the Doctor's memory of the children of Gallifrey. Number 13. The story was almost structured a lot differently. Stephen Moffat isn't exactly known for his linear storytelling, and sure enough, The Day of the Doctor bounces between several different timelines, characters, and locations. But the final layout of the episode took a lot of time to get right, with Moffat once considering introducing the three main Doctors in a completely different order. An early version of the script started with John Hurt's War Doctor before moving on to David Tennant's 10th Doctor and finally landing on Matt Smith's 11th Doctor. In the end though, Moffat chose to start with 11, mainly because he was the star of the show at the time the episode aired. Number 12. The Doctor's promise wasn't new. Just as all three incarnations of the Doctor are preparing to destroy Gallifrey, Clara reminds them of the promise they made when they chose to call themselves the Doctor.
Never cruel or cowardly.
Never give up. Never give in.
While this seems like a very Moffat-y line of dialogue, it actually isn't new. This was Moffat's way of referencing Terence Dick's description of the character in his 1976 book, The Making of Doctor Who. He never gives in and never gives up, however overwhelming the odds against him. The Doctor believes in good and fights evil. Though often caught up in violent situations, he is a man of peace. He is never cruel or cowardly. Perhaps by this point in the writing process, Moff just figured he'd copy from someone else in the class. Number 11. The origins of Osgood. Petronella Osgood made her debut in The Day of the Doctor. Played by Ingrid Oliver and complete with a Tom Baker scarf, the character was essentially a Doctor Who fangirl who just so happened to work for UNIT. Long-time Whovians might remember the character of Sergeant Osgood in the third Doctor serial The Demons, and the fact that the two characters share a name is no coincidence. Stephen Moffat originally planned for Petronella to be the daughter of Sergeant Osgood, but ultimately decided against explicitly stating this in the episode. Following the popularity of Petronella, Sergeant Osgood has been included more in Titan Comics stories, where he often shares characteristics with his daughter, including using an inhaler. Hopefully though, he's not just a really badly copied Zygon clone. Number 10. Stephen Moffat didn't want to include Rose. Don't worry, we aren't about to expose Stephen Moffat as a Rose Tyler hater. Far from it, in fact. The Day of the Doctor features not only David Tennant reprising his role, but also Billie Piper. However, rather than returning to play Rose, Piper appears as the physical manifestation of the moment. Stephen Moffat explained that he very much wanted to bring Piper along for the ride, but also felt conscious about undoing the end of Rose's story. He said, "I thought the story of Rose, which was beautiful, was done. I didn't want to add to it, I didn't feel qualified to add to it. I didn't want to stick another bit in. It would be wrong." Instead, we were treated to yet another outstanding performance from New Who's first companion. Number 9. Why it's called The Day of the Doctor. Coming up with a title for any Doctor Who episode must be a difficult task, but coming up with a title for the 50th anniversary special? That's a whole other level of pressure. During development, the special was known as The Time War, until the official title was announced on the 11th of September 2013. Moffat explained his choice of title to SFX magazine. He said, "It's very rare in Doctor Who that the story happens to the Doctor. It happens to people around him, and he helps out. He's the hero figure who rides in and saves everybody from the story of the week. In this, he is the story of the week. This is the Day of the Doctor." Number 8. Malcolm Taylor returns. Doctor Who fans will surely remember Lee Evans' enigmatic unit scientist Malcolm Taylor. He was absolutely obsessed with the Doctor, and like Osgood, acted how most Whovians would if they came face to face with the Doctor in real life. 2009 Easter special Planet of the Dead was the first and only appearance of Malcolm on our screens. But if you were paying close attention, you might have noticed that he actually made a return of sorts in The Day of the Doctor. Twice during the episode, Kate Stewart makes reference to a Malcolm working at UNIT. Firstly, she remarks that he needs to change the batteries in the Ravens at the Tower of London.
The Ravens are looking a bit sluggish. Tell Malcolm they need new batteries.
And later, she phones him to send her some old UNIT files codenamed Chroma, a reference to another multi-Doctor story, The Three Doctors.
Malcolm, I need you to send me one of my father's incident files. Codenamed Chroma.
References within references. Moff at his moffiest. Number 7. The War Doctor's regeneration was added at the last minute. The episode concludes with the War Doctor effectively shedding the guilt of the Time War and giving himself a new lease of life, quite literally, by regenerating into a brand new form. It's a crucial moment in Doctor Who history that shows us the previously unseen birth of the 9th Doctor, but amazingly, it wasn't always part of Moffat's script. In fact, he only added Hurt's regeneration at the last minute, at the same time he was writing The Night of the Doctor. While it was disappointing that we didn't get to see War fully turn into 9, it's always good to see a regeneration scene, and with Murray Gold's fantastic score and director Nick Horan's sweeping aerial camera move, this was a solid one. Number 6. Peter Cushing movie posters were cut due to copyright issues. Doctor Who first made the jump to the big screen in the 1960s when Peter Cushing, most famous for playing Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars, played a character called Doctor Who in 2 movies, Doctor Who and the Daleks and Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. These movies aren't official parts of the show's canon, but since the Day of the Doctor was a huge party everyone was invited to, Moffat still wanted to acknowledge them. During the scene where Clara and Kate enter the Black Archive, he initially wanted some Peter Cushing movie posters to be included as background Easter eggs, but unfortunately copyright issues meant that this wasn't possible. Number 5. Those Dalek gunships aren't drones. With the Day of the Doctor expanding on the Time War, it was inevitable that we were going to see plenty of Daleks in action. Audiences of modern Who had grown used to seeing not only the redesigned bronze Daleks, but also fleets of Dalek spaceships across various episodes. Both of these were showcased during the Time War sequences in the 50th anniversary special, but there were also some new spacecrafts flying about too. At face value, these crafts appear to be drones of some kind, whizzing through the air and firing down on the Gallifreyans below. But if you look closer, you'll notice that these drones are actually being piloted by a group of Daleks. It's a blink and you'll miss it detail, and you know what? Daleks actually look kinda cute when they're this small. Number 4. David Tennant's first scene was his first day on set. David Tennant doesn't appear until 20 minutes into the episode, riding out of the TARDIS on horseback, accompanied by good old Queen Bess. Oh, and he's also hunting down a Zygon, because the Doctor doesn't take days off. This scene was also Tennant's first day on set, with the actor donning his iconic costume for the first time in roughly 4 years. Producer Marcus Wilson said it was like watching live archive footage. It must have been both bizarre and brilliant to have Tennant playing the Doctor again. Number 3. One of John Hurt's funniest lines was cut. John Hurt reportedly had a great time filming The Day of the Doctor and was so comfortable in the role that he would occasionally ad-lib during a scene. An example of this occurred when the 3 Doctors are locked up inside the Tower of London. Just as Hurt was thrown into the room with his co-conspirators, he yelled, "You can't lock me up with these 2, I'll have my head off now!" However, this line was cut in post-production. Moffat said that they were fools to not include it because Hurt's delivery was apparently hilarious and far better than mine. Number 2. The Brigadier almost had a cameo. Kate Stewart first appeared in the Series 7 episode The Power of 3, where it was revealed that she was the daughter of the Doctor's old friend Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. Nicholas Courtney sadly passed away in 2011, 2 years before the 50th anniversary year, and so the inclusion of Kate seemed like the perfect way to pay homage to the Brigadier's Doctor Who legacy. However, things were nearly very different, and Stephen Moffat was first considering adding some audio clips of the Brigadier to the episode to give him a proper cameo, but in the end this was decided against. Despite his absence in the on-screen version of The Day of the Doctor, the Brigadier was present in the novelisation. There are several passages which explore conversations between him and the curator, and we all know who he was meant to be. Number 1. Matt Smith kept offering the TARDIS controls to David Tennant. Matt Smith is arguably the most adorable human being ever to walk the earth. If you need any proof of that, look no further than this anecdote from the Day of the Doctor's filming. Possibly feeling a little awkward that his co-star was stood around with nothing to do, Smith would frequently offer the TARDIS controls to David Tennant while the two were shooting those interior scenes. According to Moffat, Smith would say, "I mean, it's your TARDIS too," only for Tennant to retort, "Oh no, you're doing fine." And hey, Smith was a very experienced TARDIS pilot by this stage, even if Tennant was being a little sarcastic. Just a friendly bit of banter between Time Lords. And that concludes our list. If you think there's something we missed, then please let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss a Who Culture video ever again. I've been Ellie with Who Culture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.